Most people who grew up in the early ages of the internet and were interested in video games would have been introduced to webcomics that typically centered around video games as well as critiquing their faults and quirks, oftentimes with the use of humor. One of the flagships of this trend was the webcomic called Control-Alt-Delete by Tim Buckley. The comic was created in October 2002 and focused on the eccentric and goofy Ethan and the straight man Lucas. Later on, the comic would also go on to include the girl Lila, and her and Ethan would quickly start a relationship. What made Control-Alt-Delete stand out was its humorous way of both dealing with video games as well as the shenanigans that the characters would get up to. Oftentimes, these shenanigans would move into the realm of absurdity, with everything from time travel to even turning an Xbox into a sentient robot. The tone of the comic was always quirky and goofy, and never really strayed too far into drama without doing so with a punchline. That is why, one day, people were shocked that the comic suddenly took a turn no one expected. In 2008, the comic had reached a storyline where Ethan and Lila were expecting their first child. However, on the 2nd of June, Tim Buckley would post the now infamous strip titled Laws, in which it becomes evident that Lila has suffered a miscarriage. The strip was completely devoid of humor of any sort. Heck, it didn't even have any text. The strip simply consisted of Ethan entering a hospital, talking with a receptionist, then a doctor, and then finally standing next to the bed where Lila is laying, clutching her stomach. The comic would feature a few more strips that dove into the severity of the situation, before then returning to the typical shenanigans and humor that had come to define Control-Alt-Delete. But the strip was out there, and not a whole lot of people were pleased with the comic. Comic creators and critics alike were not being quiet about their dislike about the comic, with the creators of Penny Arcade, Mike Krahulik and Jerry Hawkins, describing Tim Buckley as the Antichrist and calling Laws the first horseman of the apocalypse. The well-known reviewer Ben Croshaw, better known as Yahtzee, made a video in which he said, having a storyline where a character miscarries in a webcomic known for humor would be considered an awkward tonal shift at best and hugely disrespectful of the subject matter at worst.
Can certainly be part of it. Let's say for sake of example that you're sick of making companion cube jokes and suddenly do a serious storyline about your female character having a miscarriage. Obviously you'd need to have several blood clots in your brain to think this is a good idea. You're established as a wacky humour comic, so this is going to be an awkward tonal shift at best and hugely disrespectful of the subject matter at worst.
The comic was also lambasted for something known as fridging, which is a term used for when an author uses the trauma of a female character as a plot device in a male character's story. This happened because the comic never dove into Lila and how it affected her, but rather focused on Ethan and how it affected him. Tim Buckley would comment on this later in a 2015 interview, stating that the reason for this is because that was the only reference point he had at the time, as that was what he had gone through himself. On the same day, Tim Buckley wrote a blog post called So Then, Let's Chat, that almost seemed to show that Tim was very much prepared for the negative reception the comic would get. In the post, he would go on to explain why he chose to put this strip in the comic in the first place, and even said that he had planned it for years. Quote, I know that everybody has their own idea of what Control-Alt-Delete is supposed to be. Some people feel it's a video game comic and the character stories are just filler or don't belong, and some people think it's a story comic and the one-shots are just filler. Most times it's characterized as a gaming comic, which is fine and understandable. When asked directly though, I describe Control-Alt-Delete as a gamer comic, or a comic about gamers. The characters in the strip are gamers, and so they have a passion for video games, and a lot of what they do and talk about focuses around games. But being a gamer is not the only thing that makes up a person's life, and there are a lot of experiences people go through whether they are a gamer or not. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering what my motivations were for this particular story path. As I've said in the past, the grand plan for the comic and its characters has been written for years. I knew that and how Ethan was going to propose to Lila when I introduced her into the comic. I knew when he proposed that shortly before the wedding, Lila was going to get pregnant and then miscarry, and I had to wait 2 years to write it. He would then further elaborate. On a deeper level, I really have a desire to stress test Ethan and Lila's relationship, to see if there is really something there that would keep them together despite Ethan's antics, and I decided that this was the best way to go about it. I know from personal experience what it can do to a relationship. Some many years ago, long before I started the comic, I was in a relationship and we suffered a miscarriage. Now, this relationship was toxic to begin with and doomed to fail regardless, so that the miscarriage was the straw that broke the camel's back came as no surprise. It was a pregnancy neither of us wanted in the first place, so the event didn't affect me nearly as much as it would, say, a couple who was trying for a child. Still, I saw the emotions it can bring up firsthand, and I saw how it could truly hurt someone. It's a tough thing to handle because it's nobody's fault. There's nobody you can blame. It can cause a rift in a relationship without someone having to be the bad guy, as in infidelity or lying. And I wanted to see if and how Ethan and Lila's relationship could weather it. And also, I wanted to see if I could write it, if I could pull it off. Call it creative curiosity, I guess. About the last part, Tim would in an interview with Brian Feldman in 2015 elaborate, quote, "I think maybe I went into the storyline with solid intentions and solid idea of where I wanted to take it, but perhaps didn't commit as thoroughly as I should have in practice." As for the people who weren't offended by the comic, the heat was officially on. Sites such as 4chan and Tumblr were having a field day editing the strips, recreating it using everything from Simpsons to this weird one with Katy Perry and a backup dancer dressed as a shark. The amount of edits that were happening caused the edits to become more and more abstract, to the point where the comic could be recreated using everything from Nerf guns to text emojis to this one where Indiana Jones is picking up the golden treasure. It got to the point where a minimalist version was created in which every character was represented with either a vertical or horizontal line. That is how this iconic set of lines came to be, and because it was as simple as just replacing those lines with, well, anything, the strip continued to live for many years and still exists to this day. In fact, on the 2nd of June 2018, on the now infamous strip's 10th anniversary, the original strip was replaced with an edit of the strip called Found. In it, it's the exact same strip as before, only now Ethan is seen smirking at the audience, as if acknowledging the meme that the strip had become. The very next day, the strip was replaced back to the original. Furthermore, the next year, the strip was once more replaced by an edit of the comic, this time titled Cross, in which Lila succeeded in giving birth to the baby, only this time, the baby was a ball with the lost lines drawn on it. Since the strip's rise in meme stardom, Tim Buckley seems to have weathered the storm rather well. He has admitted that he could have handled the whole thing better, but it doesn't seem like he would have wanted to cut it out altogether if he had the chance. He's multiple times stated that female readers of the comic appreciated him openly talking about such a taboo subject, considering how isolating an experience it can be for those who suffer from it. That being said, Tim's feelings about the memes have gone a little up and down over the years. Tim's been angry that he feels he miscalculated his demographics' ability or willingness to approach such a sensitive subject, and has been frustrated that Ctrl-Alt-Delete was pigeonholed as a wacky gamer comic when Tim perhaps wanted it to be more than that. But as time has gone on, he's found himself to be rather amused by the edits, even despite the subject matter. And today he's flattered that something he made has been entertaining people for so long. During the research for this comic, I came across several articles that raised the question as to why Lost has stuck around for so many years and why it even became a meme to begin with. And it seems that the consensus is that Tim thought this comic was more than what his audience thought it was. And so he decided to introduce something incredibly dark and taboo in a comic which was most well known for video games and penis jokes. Due to this clash in tones, people were taken back and dealt with it in the best way they knew how, comedy. And because of the many edits and lack of text, you were effectively able to create a Lost meme with little to no effort. All it took was 6 vertical things and 1 horizontal, positioned in a specific order. Due to this simplicity, anyone can make a Lost meme, and you will even find the meme pop up in various forms of pop culture without even knowing it. When everything is said and done, Ethan and Lila may not have gotten the baby they wanted. But in return, Tim has been able to give birth to one of the longest running memes in internet history. Thank you for watching. If you guys have any webcomic stories you want me to cover, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you next time. Take care.